Hi guys, welcome to the Macros Bodybuilding and Powerlifting podcast. I'm here with Mark today. Say hi, Mark.
Hello guys, how we doing?
So we have had some interesting questions from our clients this week that I think, again, a whole range of people are going to benefit from these. And some of these are actually quite kind of personal training specific in terms of kind of what we recommend to new personal trainers coming into the industry or online coaches potentially, which is quite interesting. I guess a lot of my clients are thinking about potentially doing it on the side or something. I'm not sure, but that's something that's very cool. And so we have a question from Luke Durrant saying, okay, so the first question is thoughts on Huel, which is like a supplement. I'm actually not completely sure what it is at all, so I don't know if you have anything to say on this, Mark.
Huel, not even, I've no idea what Huel is. I know it's a supplement, and I know that it's been marketed around Facebook and things just now, but I've not, to be honest, I've not looked into it at all, and yeah, not very sure.
That's fine because that's exactly the same for me. I often see these things advertised and they come up and I basically ignore them. And
Yeah,
I think it says quite a lot if both me and Mark ignore these sort of things because they're probably not worth your time. Focusing on priorities is always number one. Sorry, can't help you much more with that, Luke. But your next question we can talk a bit more about. In that he's asked about online nutrition education. So there's Shredded by Science, Mac University has just come out. There's Body Type Nutrition Academy. And he's just basically asking for aspiring coaches, which of these would you go for? Because there's quite a lot of choice nowadays. And I know for myself, there's also Lift the Bar, which isn't a course. I don't think they're doing a course. They might have a course coming, but it's like a community. And then there's
yep.
Elite Fitness Mentoring with Shredded by Science, I think it is. So yeah, you go for it, Mark, and then I'll jump in if there's anything I want to say.
Cool. Well, I think especially with the online course, it depends really how far you want to take your qualification, whether you want to, I think regardless if you're going to go down an online route only or not, I think you'll still have to get yourself qualified in personal training, um, as a personal trainer, just for like even insurance purposes and things, and then getting like basic understanding of PTing. So the courses aren't fantastically great, unfortunately. Um, my PT course, the syllabus is very dated, but I still think it's important to get that qualification done. Then, if you wanted to take more of an online route, then yeah, there's more and more coming out all the time, and I think as personal trainer specific, then I think not so much a course, but being a part of Lift the Bar, as you mentioned, Chris Burgess Lift the Bar. It's just an amazing resource for personal trainers, coaches. It's a community, and people will just bounce like, even business ideas around, and everyone shares, kind of their coaching systems, and everyone just gets a better. Um, a lot of great information there. The website's brilliant. You get access to a member site with tons of different stuff on there. They do webinars. They even had Mike Israetel on, people like Joseph Agu. So it's very, very knowledgeable people, and you get access to all this through Lift the Bar. As a qualification, I know that the Shredded by Science course that's just came out, I think they run the first one last year, is a particularly good course. And again, it's down to you only have to look at the people who lecture on that course. So they actually have, Luke Johnson lectures on a part of it, but they also have Eric Helms and Mike Zurdos, Dr. Mike Zurdos, coaching on that course as well.
That's
And
specific to bodybuilders and powerlifters, isn't it? Or do they
it,
cover? I know,
no, they
to be
they
fair,
cover.
it covers quite a wide range of people.
Yeah, they cover the very first. I think there's 4 modules throughout the course, and they cover everything from general personal trainers 1-to-1 in a gym, and they cover things like even how to go about getting clients, working with general population clients. Then there's a module about slightly advanced stuff, whether you want to take on coaching for athletes, bodybuilders, and powerlifters, and that's where the Eric Helms and Mike Zurdos part comes in. And then there's a good part on that Luke Johnson presents regarding just like how to build a client base, how to target an avatar, and then even client retention, which is obviously really important. So there's it would depend on the course you wanted to do would really depend on where you wanted to go in terms of whether it's purely online or purely one-to-one or a hybrid like myself. I coach online clients and one-to-one, and then you could even tailor your learning to what you're most passionate about or where you think your career is going to go. So if you're really, really interested in taking on bodybuilding clients and powerlifting clients, then SBS might be great. If you want to help people more of a general population, then things like Mark University, so Mark McDonald's University, and coaching things about nutrition for beginners and athletes, I think would be a great course. So any of that too, with a mixture of getting your base or your very bottom level PT certificate would be a great idea, I think.
Yeah, I think I completely agree in that. I think for a lot of, I mean, I don't think there is actually a need because it's not regulated at the moment. I mean, personal training is badly regulated, so the actual online coaching side is even worsely regulated. It's hardly regulated at all. So I think you can actually coach people.
Yeah,
I mean, I coached people online kind of for pittance before I became a qualified personal trainer, just because I had a YouTube channel. People were contacting me because I was talking about things, and I had been in the kind of industry before I became a qualified personal trainer and did it full time. So I'm a bit of a unique case in that I kind of started backwards because I started kind of doing it a bit online, not really focusing on it. Had like 2 clients while I was working a full-time job. And then I did a personal training qualification part-time, which I think, like you said, is really important because most people will then go and be a personal trainer in person, which I think is a really valuable aside to then going online properly, because I think by doing that in person, that for me anyway, made me appreciate how important it is to get a connection with that client, because when you're online, it's very easy to just be emails and just like X's and O's. And once you've been in the industry a while and once you've been coaching people online for a while and in person, you realize how much of it is psychological and lifestyle, and that stuff is where kind of the money's made, as it were, or the gains, the results come. So I think it's really important, like you said, get that qualification. In terms of where you get that from, I don't think it necessarily matters too much, because I don't think the number of kind of boards out there, any of them are particularly great. I think you probably could pick better ones. They're more expensive, and there's some good ones in the USA that are probably better than the cheapy ones in the UK.
Yeah.
But because there are like SBS, Mac Nutrition, things like that out there that are amazing additional kind of further education for online for personal trainers in general, I don't think you necessarily need to go all out expensive with your additional like your first certification. You kind of get that like you do, kind of you pass your driving test, then that's where the kind of learning comes in. You start driving the roads, you start to navigate things, you get experience, and that's where the real learning comes in once you've got that grounding education. In terms of kind of the courses, I think I'm probably fairly unique in the fact that I'm not part of Lift the Bar, I'm not part of SBS Elite, I'm not part of any of those groups, and I haven't done the SBS Academy, I haven't done Mac Nutrition, although that might change in future. I have considered each of them, and there's a huge amount out there to choose from, and it is difficult as an online personal trainer, as a personal trainer, to know which one to pick for. And I think, Mark, you put it really quite bluntly and correctly, that pick your niche. If you want to coach powerlifters and bodybuilders, do the SBS course. If you want to do someone more general, pick the one that suits your kind of clientele, who you have a passion to help. And I guess the only reason maybe I haven't gone down the SBS route or other routes is, well, a big one for me is time, just because I have been in the industry long enough to have a full client base, and I have been educating myself for ages, go to every seminar there possibly is. So I do feel like I have a really good grounding of the knowledge required to do my job, and I've got a lot of experience too, which puts me off a little bit, but it's more the time. The money isn't an issue for me. I know the information is going to be fantastic, and I'm sure I'll pick stuff up, and it'll just be great to kind of recap anyway and revise. It's the time. But if you have got the time to put into it, or you feel like you lack that grounding education to help your clients fully, then I definitely would put the time aside to do one of these courses, because like you said, they're evidence-based courses. They're fantastic. I know Luke Johnson personally. He's a great guy. I've met Martin McDonald. Again, really, really smart, really, really nice people. But at the end of the day, they are always going to struggle because there's so much free information out there as well. With podcasts, with our podcast, you can learn so much from my articles, from all the different websites. But these courses put it into kind of a formatted system that's going to teach you in the best way. So if you're ever reading an article and you're like, I want more, or I can't grasp that fully, these are really going to help. I don't know if I have anything else to say on that. Do you, Mark?
No, mate. No. Well, the only thing would be as well, just to add to that, is you don't actually, like you said, you don't need certain qualifications. One thing I thought about doing in the past was even like, a master's or honours degree or something, just to give some letters at the end of my name. And it was only after researching it for myself and talking to guys with that credentials who said, unless you really are serious about working in research or publications, then it might not be necessary anyway. So like you said as well, even just getting the baseline qualification and then getting your own education, even from podcasts and reading, you're probably going to be the streets ahead of most people anyway.
Yeah, I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, you're in and around a community of well-educated people. I'm going to make that assumption straight off the bat.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd agree. I actually thought about going back to university and doing like a nutrition or exercise physiology, and I wish I'd done those to begin with because, but I mean, you can't kind of. I don't have any regrets doing the degree I did. I still got a lot from it, and I think, unless you're gonna, I did ask people about it. Unless you're gonna go into research or something, it's not something. A lot of the information is very applicable to kind of just clientele. So the final part of the question, which I think is a good part, is do either of us have coaches? And if we don't, why don't we? And who would you want to coach you if you did get one? So I'm going to put that to you first, Mark, because I can then think about it.
Okay. Well, interestingly, I don't have a coach. I've been coached in the past as more of a one-to-one and PT, and that was because I wanted to get experience on how very good PTs in my area had done their job, so I could learn from them. And in fact, I work there now, and I'm lucky enough to be working in the best PT facility in Aberdeen, which is really weird for me actually, but that's kind of where things started. As far as having a coach to look over what I'm doing at the moment, I don't. And it's really just because I've got, right at this moment in time, I haven't really got much need for a coach. I don't find it hard to get motivated to train or to stick to nutrition. I'm trying everything I can to gain muscle. It's very easy to eat food. And I just don't need that accountability. Having said that, if I was to go into a dieting period, much like I did before I was lucky enough to become a coach with Revive Stronger, I got in contact with yourself. We've done the mini cut, which is fantastic. I learned a lot from that. Sneaky plug. I think just having that community as well really helped, and accountability. And I think for most people, that's the main reason people get coaches. A lot of people kind of know what to do, kind of know what to eat, what they maybe shouldn't be eating all that much of, and to train. But just to get things straightened out, get the facts, and get that accountability, that's why a lot of people get coaches. Now, there's a possibility that I might have some things on next year that I'll get a coach for, just to keep that accountability going. I'm okay at coaching our people. I'm terrible at coaching myself through a dieting period. So yeah, I would definitely consider a coach. And who I would have to coach me, I don't know how to answer that one. I'd have to have a serious think about that. Maybe even give you a shout, Steve. You could get me through that dieting period. What about yourself?
So I don't have a coach either at the moment. I am my own coach. Reason for that being, I had a coach for a long period of time during my contest prep, before it and slightly after it as well. And whilst I learned a hell of a lot, Greg Farris was my coach at the time. If anyone knows who he is, Myo Brain. And I haven't actually spoken to him for a long time, but he taught me a lot. I learned a ton about myself, about how set up programming, how kind of to set things up as an online coach. And although I was already coaching at the same time, it just kind of helped me see what another coach was doing. And that definitely helped. And that's a big reason I'd get a coach in future, to actually see how they approach their online coaching. And obviously I definitely make sure I get a kind of top level coach, someone who I aspire to be like.
Yeah.
I'll come on to that in a minute, but in terms of kind of coaching myself, I wanted to just take the realm for a bit, like trust in my own coaching and my own abilities, and kind of use myself as a bit of a test subject, because I hate giving clients stuff that I've never done before. So for example, going from kind of this high volume training into a maintenance strength block, I trialed that before any of my clients were to go through it. The mini cut, before I released the mini cut movement, I'd done several mini cuts myself, and then I trialed exactly what I was going to put all my clients through, or a similar variation of.
Yeah.
So just having that ability to have all that control of myself was really helpful. And then, I didn't feel a huge need for a coach for a long period of time. Like yourself, I'm highly motivated to train. I don't miss training sessions. I don't screw up my nutrition. I have a very kind of stress-free lifestyle in that I work from home. I'm self-employed, and I can do all this all myself. And in addition to that, I am going to conferences. I have some amazing contacts. I have Mark, who I bounce ideas off my training. I have Mike Israel, who I bounce ideas off my training. I have the guys at 3DMJ who I can talk. Like, I can't just go hi, like, give me your answer straight away. But if I really have a kind of tough question that I want an answer to, I know I could email them and they give me a response. Obviously, you can't kind of bash heads with them and like talk for ages like you would if you had a coach, which is incredibly handy, and I love doing it with my clients. So in future, I definitely want to look to invest in a coach. One, from that education aspect, to see how they do things, to see if I can kind of incorporate some of that stuff into my own coaching. And also from a stress management aspect, in that next year, there might be some competitive elements of my year there. I'm not sure, but they definitely help reduce my stress, allow me to focus on my clients, on my business, on my life, which I think will really help. But a large part, kind of online coaching works incredibly well for intermediate to advanced trainees, and a big reason for that is not always the accountability. It's the kind of bashing heads and keeping you adhering to what you're doing and trusting in the process, because I think even as advanced or intermediates, we get very much kind of is it a magpie that goes over the shiny things? Is that right? I'm not sure if I've got the right bird, but there's definitely a bird that likes shiny objects and chases them. And so, it can happen. And in terms of who I'd want to coach me, I really have my eyes on 3DMJ or Renaissance Periodization, if I'm honest. They're the two people I aspire to. I aspire to their coaches, I aspire to their practice. And between which, I'm not sure where I'm going to go. It just kind of, I don't know what it will come down to. It might even come down to something like a coin flip or who has availability. And but that's it. It's also something I think a lot of kind of guys in our position maybe get a bit nervous about giving the realm to someone else. But I think we just have to trust that they're going to bounce ideas off you just like we do our clients.
Yeah.
But I thought that's a good question.
A great question.
So next question, I think we've already covered in terms of certifications for personal trainers. Sondre has asked, and I'm not completely sure what this is. I don't know if you've seen this question already. Said a bit of a weird one and relevant for bodybuilding, tips on manscaping, which I think is that specifically trying to grow your like side delts?
Okay, you could be right. I'm going to tell you what I thought it was. I thought that manscaping was more to do with uh, male grooming
Grooming.
of certain areas. I don't know if that would be um, relevant to. I mean, I guess if you're a bodybuilder and you're going to go on stage, I know. Did you not talk about recently actually not shaving your armpits or
Yeah.
something?
So I think you're right. I think because Sandra said this is a bit of a weird one, whereas and you wouldn't call kind of trying to develop weak points or something manscaping. Yeah, I think you're right. Male grooming essentially, and yeah, I forgot to shave. Not that you can see, I've got hairy armpits right now because I don't tend to shave those in the improvement season, as I called it in my latest article.
I like that.
It's tips. I'm not sure what to say apart from if you have got like a photo shoot or a bodybuilding show, you want to get that hair off a long time before because you don't know if we don't do it regularly as males, or you might, I don't know, but when you remove hair, it could get irritated, and so you want you want good skin on stage or in a photo shoot. And I know for my photo shoot, actually, my professional one, I shaved like 2 days before, and my legs were like had red dimples on. And if you look really closely at some of my photos, you can see it, and it's gutting because it's like it doesn't look good.
Yeah.
But I actually think, for me personally, I used like a not a close razor. I used like a hair one,
Yeah.
like the longer bits. Got it fairly short, and then just used a razor over everything. I tried Veet, but I didn't get on with it. How about yourself, Mark? Do you do any grooming apart from your beard?
Nope. I'm. I don't know if I'm lucky or unlucky. My brother would say that I'm. I'm unlucky, but I don't have much hair at all anywhere. Um, I guess that might be a side effect. I can't remember how I was looking before chemotherapy, but certainly since I don't have any hair in on my chest or anything, so even my legs aren't particularly hairy. So I've only done one photo shoot in the past where that didn't take much manscaping at all. But I do know for a fact, yeah, you're 100% about doing it a few days or even giving yourself a test 2 or 3 weeks before. Um, I've seen people come out in terrible rashes, people that I've coached for like a photo shoot or, even when you're putting certain things on your skin to go on stage or fake tan and stuff, it can really get irritable. So giving yourself a trial run a few weeks before is going to be way the best idea that you can do with that for sure. Yeah.
Just like doing a mock meet or something, do a
Yeah.
practice run. I actually recommend that with like my bodybuilding clients. Do a practice run. We'll do the whole kind of peak week almost, just to make sure kind of what we could do better or worse. Tanning is, you want to practice your tan because everyone's complexion is different as well. So you don't know whether you need more or less of it, what color it will come out as. So it's important definitely to try out those things. Yeah, and do it in advance.
Yeah. Do not leave it for last minute because there's going to be nothing more stressful than like a streaky tan or a skin breakout on the day. It's just going to stress you out more than you need to be as well. You're already going to be stressed enough.
All I would say is with the tanning aspect, you can, some shows, at my UK DFBA one, they had a professional tanner who was at the show who just sorted it all out, and that was amazing. It took so much stress away from me. If anyone's in the UK, Nicola Gilbert, I think her name is, A1 Tanning or something like that. Very good tanner, and she'll just sort you out. It's just a load of stress off your back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think I've got anything else to say about that.
Same here, but we've got a question more directed to you, Steve.
Oh yeah.
From Mike Burman.
Oh yeah.
He says, when you competed, did you have a coach, which you already referred to? But also, is there anything that you would have done differently during your prep?
Cool. So yeah, this is a great question. I could probably talk for far too long about it. So first of all, I would have shaved my armpits for my first show. Because believe it or not, guys, I was told that potentially cost me placings, and my tan was also not dark enough. I mean, it was really gutting because Charlotte got quite upset about it, and I am a bit annoyed about it because our relationship was a bit on edge anyway because it just is in a bodybuilding prep if anyone's been there. and she did my tan for me. And we thought it looked fine. It looked fine backstage. It was dark. But yeah, we got told it wasn't dark enough. And yeah, that kind of upset her a bit because she knows how much I put into it. And then shaving my armpits seemed like an obvious one. It's good. I'm kind of glad I made those mistakes because that was my practice show for my main one. And now when I coach people, I won't let them make those mistakes. Something that the biggest thing I would have changed with my prep would be to have taken a diet break. I started prepping in January and finished prep in the end of September. So like now. So that was a hell of a long time to be and I was in a deficit. I wasn't in a deficit the entire time because there was refeeds, but that's all. There was no extended diet break for a week even. And I don't know about you, Mark, but I have found diet breaks to be an absolute game changer for my clients. I've never gone through an extended dieting period apart from that contest prep and one time before then, which I didn't know what I was doing until I did ketosis. So I've not actually taken a proper diet break myself, but I certainly will be planning them in future.
Honestly, I think the game changer is that's the term I would use as well, man. Like I even when I take clients on board now, I tell them right from the start that we'd only have to go and diet for this amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Just give it your everything for this period of time, whether it's 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 10 weeks or 12 weeks or maybe 14 weeks, 16 weeks, depending on the client, depending on the level that they're at already. Then we'll have this diet break. And even with myself now, I'm a bit of a geek like this, but I've already planned out my first 6 months of next year, what I'm going to be doing.
Done that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to take some time to get rid of some of the body fat that I've accumulated the second half of this year, and I'm not going on a severe contest prep diet. I don't have to get to crazy levels of conditioning, but I'm still going to give myself a diet break because I know just in that times when I am dieting, I'm going to give it 100% because I know that diet break is coming up. So even psychologically, it's huge for me, and I've found it to be hugely beneficial to my clients as well. I even put on their spreadsheets highlighted diet break, so they know they can just flick through a few weeks and it's coming up, and it's a game changer. And absolutely, I think, man, going from January to September in a deficit, wow. I never knew that you didn't break, actually.
Yeah. I mean, diet breaks, to be fair, diet breaks weren't as well known to be so beneficial back then. So I think that would be partly why. And yeah, the diet break will be probably the main thing that I would have changed because there was a time in which I really stalled out at 170 pounds, I remember. And there was weeks at which I was at 170 pounds. So you might think that's kind of a diet break, but because I'm maintaining weight, but it wasn't. It was just accumulative stress and it was really tough. Whereas, this, like you said, I've planned out. I know I'm maintaining now, mini cut, and then I'm going through a short massing period, maintain, and then I'm going through a 12-week dieting period with then a 4-week maintenance phase and then another 12-week dieting period. And even in those 12-week dieting periods, there's short diet breaks when I deload, which I didn't get when I was in contest prep again. That's probably the main thing I'd change. The other thing I'd change would be, more so a lesson learned for myself was not get so isolated. I'd keep myself a bit open to more people, especially with Charlotte. I'd be much more aware of how kind of unaffectionate I'm being and how kind of I'm not sharing my emotions and keeping them very much to myself. And I'd make sure I realise what I'm doing is a selfish choice. I'm putting myself through this. No one else is forcing me to do it. My coach isn't forcing me. No one is. That's something I'd very much make sure I'd be aware of. And then in terms of training, I'm not intending, to be fair, I might outsource my coaching, but I don't intend to do much HIIT, if any at all. And then I wouldn't, what was I going to say? My training style would be, I think, different. I wouldn't go for the high intensity like I was back then. I was going for there's definitely a focus on strength when I think that actually, like Mike Israel explained in a recent podcast, it was kind of like I can't remember his analogy. It was something to do with defending gold, wasn't it? And
Yeah.
basically, if you try and do one thing too hard, whereas if you try and do another thing, you can you'll hold on to some. Basically, train for muscle, not for strength, would be the moral of the story. That would be a big thing I'd change.
Yeah.
There's so much that I've learned an incredible amount. I just posted actually on my Instagram how much I've learned since that contest prep. 2 years have gone by, and it will be this time next year. It'll be 3 years, and I continue to learn things that are just, like we said, game changers. The diet break would be the biggest one. So, without having to go on too much of a ramble on my contest prep, that would probably be the main thing I'd change.
Yeah, it's so important as well that you've been there and done that as well. And now that you know you're, because of that extended diet period that you went on, and because of some of the not mistakes, because there weren't any mistakes, but some of the things that you could have done more effectively at the time, because you've done that as a coach, right off the bat, when your clients sign up for a contest prep, you can feed them this information straight away, and there's going to be no surprises along the way.
Well, there might be some.
Yeah, some surprises, but they're certainly going to be more equipped for exactly what they're getting into, because you can relay that information that you've got. Things like, how because it is a selfish sport, and I think people need to realise that before they get into. There's a big difference between going from, not very lean at all to lean, and being lean to getting super lean and contest prep lean. That the differences are astronomical, and like I said, it's very different going from, a photo shoot or just getting lean for a holiday or the summer. This is a different ballgame, and as a coach, that you can offer that service to people straight away when they sign up is hugely beneficial to them in the service that they'll get. So I think it's a great learning curve that you've been on, and to then offer that to future clients as well.
Yeah, I do definitely think at least you have to have gone through it
Yep.
to take people through it, or you need to have someone very close to you who you can contact to before you make any big decisions. Because I know that even if you take away 10 grams of carbs from someone in contest prep, that is a heck of, they're going to be screwing at you. Whereas for a general fat loss client, it's probably just oh, okay, I just eat a little bit less. It's not a big deal. Or even for me, I remember in contest prep, it was okay, your cardio is going up 500 calories. And I was just man,
it's the worst news ever. I actually agree. And if someone was to ask me in the street or online, should you have been through a bodybuilding contest yourself, a bodybuilding prep to prep a client, I would say yes. Should you have to go through a powerlifting meet to coach a powerlifting client? Then yeah, probably. You've got to know what to expect on the day, and you've got to be able to advise your clients as best you can. The only time I haven't done a physique show, I've obviously got my reasons for that. I coached a client through a bodybuilding prep. It was against what I just said, that people should have gone through it. The only reason I'd done it was something that stuck with me. I was approached by the client, and it was more of a, she was from Aberdeen. She had a very, very good coach, and she just wanted that one-to-one contact every week. It wasn't my preference, if I'm being honest. But something that Eric Helm said really stuck in my head was, even though I wasn't the greatest equipped to take her through that contest prep in terms of experience and doing it myself, she would still benefit from being under somebody who cared about her and has a bit of compassion and just a general foundations of this stuff than doing it on her own, when it comes to making decisions and getting stressed and freaked out about stuff. So I have coached someone through a contest prep, but I would still say if you're going to start doing that as your market, if you're going to start coaching clients, you've got to have been through that process. And not just to experience a day, but to experience the whole ride and being able to give your clients some knowledge on what to expect. I think it's super important.
I think it's important just like as a coach as well, because your client will ask you questions and you won't be able to provide the answers because you've not experienced it yourself. And although there's always that within coaching, there's always times a client will say, oh, my weight's done this, why has it done it? It's always a multiple of different factors. You can never be sure. But to be fair to you, Mark, as well, I had a client who I took through a contest prep as well, female client, and although I've taken males through it, I've done myself, I'd never taken a female through. And again, I felt like I didn't feel like I was best equipped for her to help her. But like probably in your case, she really wanted me to do it. She trusted me in it. And we had a fantastic relationship. We continue to have a fantastic relationship. And I actually am very happy, and like I wouldn't change the decision I made to coach her because we get on so well. And I really think I'm probably one of the best people that could be coaching her right now because of who she is. And in those sort of cases, I mean, it's difficult because, for me, for females, I've learned a lot over the past few months even, let alone the last year, about how to approach their kind of coaching. But the psychological aspect, like we said before, is huge. And people discount that with online coaching. And as soon as you discount that, you will not survive in the industry and you won't get good results. And your clients will leave.
100%, mate. Yeah. Okay, I think we got to that one.
Yeah, I think that's good enough.
Covered the meat and potatoes, that one. So another question that I wanted to ask you, because I think you'll be the man to answer this one. I think we've got Scott Thomas on and asking, okay, does rotating the exercise selection every block of training have any drawbacks to negative impacts on progression or negative impacts on progression? In terms of, it's difficult to track an actual progression if you're changing exercise every 5 weeks per block. So if you're just swapping things up, mesocycle into mesocycle, you're not actually being able to measure because you're swapping between exercises.
Cool. So this is a good question because Scott will know this is something that I quite often do. I do quite often change. I mean, you'd probably be rare to find me change every single exercise within a mesocycle to the next one, but I quite often change quite a lot. And that isn't something I used to always do. I used to have like a core number of exercises that basically would never ever change. And it was only until really reading up on not just Mike Israetel's book, The Scientific Principles of Strength Training, but also then further textbooks on it and reading up on the literature of periodization, that I realized that you can change exercises every mesocycle, and that is very appropriate for anyone who is kind of intermediate to advanced. I'd say when it isn't appropriate, it's probably when you're more of a novice. You don't want to be changing them probably every month because you're still learning how to do them. So if you're that new, then you want to be doing that. But once you've got the basic technique down, for someone who isn't doing highly technical lifts like in bodybuilding and powerlifting, you might argue the power lifts are quite highly technical, but to be honest, once you know how to squat, if you go off it for a month and come back, it's not that you don't know how to squat. You still pick it up after a few weeks, just like I've been doing now. I haven't sumo deadlifted in 4 months. I hadn't low bar squat in 4 months. You look at my Instagram, you look at me doing them, you won't be like, that guy's fucking never done that in his life. You wouldn't. You'd be like, that guy can lift because I can. And although my strength is down to what it was, I knew that, and that's like a programmed aspect, and it's hard to take, but it's irrelevant. That it does happen. But to answer Scott's question, I think first of all we need to say why we do it. So the reason we change them almost every 5 weeks or every 4 to 6 weeks, every mesocycle, is because something called adaptive resistance. So that's basically, we know this, the more you do something, the less responsive you come to it. And although you might get better over time, you might still be getting better, there will become a point at which you'll stall. And for someone who's looking to gain muscle especially, a lot of the improvements you'll see, especially with strength, won't necessarily be muscle building progression. There'll be technique progression. You'll become more neurologically kind of, your specificity on that exercise will get better and better, which just because you're progressively overloading, you might be able to progressively overload something you're not as technically as good at, but that will stress your body so much more, and that stress is going to be so much of a stimulus for more muscle growth, which is why we change them kind of every month, so that you've got enough time to make a progression with it, but not then so much time that you end up stalling out with it. So you change them like that. And the way you, obviously, like if you've done low bar squats month 1 and then month 2 you're into high bar squats, so you've changed it so you can't compare those to one another. What you do compare though is you keep those training notes, then when you come back to your low bar squats, look at a comparative week and has it improved, and it probably has, because you wouldn't expect it to improve from kind of that week 4 in that first block to then week 1 in that block, because you're not going to be pushing that hard, or maybe you shouldn't be. You compare that week 4 to that week 4.
Absolutely.
So I think the key to track progression is you look over a longer term. You don't necessarily look month to month. You look over several months, because even for an intermediate trainee, you're probably not going to improve every single month. It probably takes longer than that. It will depend on your genetics and how close you are to that genetic ceiling. But I think, the key to solving that problem, which isn't a problem really, is keeping good training notes and understanding why you're doing it. Because for a sport like powerlifting, you do stay quite specific and you don't get too far away from the squat necessarily. But when you're really far away from competition, you can get quite far away from it. And when you come closer to competition, you get really specific. So Scott will know this, that during his strength block and then a peaking block, he'll be doing basically the 3 big lifts. And that's like 10, 12 weeks of following, kind of banging on specific strength for that movement. And that is where kind of everything phases and potentiates each other into that. If you were to continue to do low bar, like your power lifts throughout the year, it will hold you back because you can't use as much volume. You'll fall into adaptive resistance. You'll potentially get injuries from overuse. And that's why you have to change things now and then. And it's about changing them enough, but not so much that you end up falling into that trap of like muscle confusion. For a bodybuilder, it's slightly different because strength is kind of a byproduct of what you're doing. And like you said, Mark, you kind of want to track your 10 rep maxes, not your 1 rep maxes, and it's kind of a different kind of ballpark altogether. And the strength block for a for a bodybuilder is entirely different to a powerlifter in that, you might get stronger, but that isn't really the name of the game. It's to prime you for high volumes going forward. Whereas for a powerlifter, you're making that muscle strong, and that is the name of the game. And you're going to spend longer in those strength blocks. I've gone on a complete and utter ramble there. What do you reckon, Mark?
You didn't at all. You answered that perfectly. So, in your opinion, how much should we look? Does it have to be quite a dramatic change, or could it simply be from, if you were doing, we'll take a bicep curl for instance, because everyone loves a bicep curl. Maybe one block you've got a standing barbell curl and your shoulder line is fairly neutral. Could it just be a case of going into something with a shoulder flexion or shoulder extension, hitting them like a muscle at a different angle, maybe bringing in maybe moving from extension to flexion? Would that be enough of a change from mesocycle to mesocycle?
100%. Even as small as things like grip width on a bench press. Yeah. So you might even do something like, for a powerlifter, say, like your first mesocycle, you were on dumbbell bench press, then you move to close grip bench press, then you move to wide grip bench press, and then you move to competition or touch and go, and then competition bench press in like your peaking and strength blocks. So your degree of specificity gets closer and closer towards what you need it to be. For a bodybuilder, it's a bit different because you have just so much more fun to play with. So it can be as small as like, okay, my muscle fibers are getting worked at this angle, I'm going to slightly lean over, now they're getting worked at that angle, and the peak tension is going to be different, muscle fibers are going to be stressed in a different way, and variations can be really small, even to the degree that just to take Scott, for example, we've gone to sumo deadlifting and he absolutely loves it. And I always ask my clients, like, is there any particular exercises you really want to hold on to for the next block? And Scott, I know, wants to hold on to sumo deadlifts. So I'm not going to take them away. I'm just going to put them on the back burner because they've been on the front as his focus. Put them on the back burner. The volume's going to be quite low on them. Overuse injuries are going to come down. He's going to become more adaptive to that volume again. So when they come in again, he'll be able to really progress with them. Because, progression slows down. And it's kind of like, do you want to continually drive in the middle lane, or do you want to go fast lane, slow lane, fast lane, slow lane? And the way we're hoping is that by doing the fast and slow lane, you end up, or even fast and middle lane would probably be a better analogy, then because you're in the fast lane for a period of time and then you put it on the back burner, you kind of get progress faster. That's the way I'd put it anyway.
Yeah, and I think as well, if you've gone, there's very little. I don't think you'd be hard pushed to go completely wrong with a bodybuilding split, for example. If you're progressively overloading, and again, I think it's important as well is what you mentioned. We're looking at things over mesocycles or over a few mesocycles. This is not. You might not be smashing volume week to week or session to session. That's might not happen. But if you're in a point where you're getting quite comfortable with your training, and you're very efficiently moving the weight, and there's not causing much stress in your body, you're not particularly sore after it. I think that's when the alarm bell should maybe just start ringing. Maybe it's time to change things up. Homeostasis is clearly not being disrupted enough, and you've got to start being a little bit more smarter with your programming just to make sure that you're always going to get that stimulus and always going to get that adaptations, because that's what we want. We have to work seriously hard at making these muscles grow. And if you're getting to a point where if you've had the same grip on the lat pull down for 3 or 4 months, and you're strong and you feel like that it's very efficient and you're not getting sore from that session, that might not be the best way to go about your training. And so that's why even shifting things from angle to angle, just create that slight different change, could be hugely beneficial.
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that we're not saying that you can't progress and get better by keeping things relatively stable, but you'll see faster progression by changing things up. It's similar to like body composition changes. If you could probably gain muscle very, very slowly and then cut very, very slowly, or you could do both a bit quicker and get there faster, or even try and do a recomp, which would be incredibly difficult, but it can be done if you have things very precisely laid out, like in the Ultimate Diet 2 by Lyle McDonald. But it's incredibly hard to stick to, and the progress is probably going to be a bit slower, or it will be slower than if you actually go through periods of dedicated bulking, dedicated cutting. And that's why this kind of the block approach works really well, because the body adapts to things really quickly. So you want it to adapt, but then you don't want to adapt to a point where it gets efficient. That's then where it's like a problem. And people will know this example of like cardio, and people say the more you do the cardio, like eventually you won't burn as many calories, or you'll get fat from doing cardio because you'll end up being so efficient that you end up hardly burning anything. And that is true unless you track things like your intensity. You keep pushing the intensity, and then you could even actually switch up your cardio sources to keep things ticking over, to make sure that you're continuously progressing. Definitely something I've fallen into in the past is keeping things exactly the same and basically not really changing.
Me too.
And it's easy to fall into, but the phasic approach works so well.
I think I've overcomplicated things in the past as well. So if I've had a 5-day training block, and I'll maybe just say it was either lower body or upper body 3 times a week. We'll go upper body, and I would maybe have 3 different main vertical pulls in that program. So then I'm never really getting that consistent adaptation from that. I've now got to change 3 different exercises from an X mesocycle, and yeah, everything just gets a little bit more confusing, and I've most definitely overthought my own programming before.
Yeah.
So along with that, for anyone who's thinking about or watching this and thinking about, right, okay, this is great. I'm gonna start doing this. My next block's going to look like what Steve's saying here. If, for example, it was a pull down or a bench press, would you say to keep the vertical pull the same? If it's a 4-day split, for example, would they keep the vertical pull the same action on the 2 days, or would they chop and change it, or have multiple vertical pulls in the same week?
I think it's probably a good idea to have a couple in there so you can hit it from a couple of angles. But I think, yeah, like you said, if you try and hit it from every angle, then you're going to waste your kind of tools, because it's like, where do you go next block? You can't continuously try and do that. And I've done the same as you. I even have like a spreadsheet where I was like, it was where does the peak tension get produced? So like for the glutes, for example, like a hip thrust, the peak tensions when they're like locked out, and then you can hit them from like a Bulgarian split squat to get it in a different area, like middle end, like at short lengths, long lengths, and mid lengths for the peak tension. And I remember trying to do that for every single muscle, and I was like, I'm so lost. Where can I go? And yeah, you don't want to fall into that trap. I quite like having 2 for each muscle group is probably a good bet.
Yeah, great, cool.
Shall I ask? I think Sondre's got one more question. If I ask it to you, is that cool?
Ooh, I don't know about this one. Fire away.
All right. So, training with soft tissue health in mind. Often we only talk about how much volume our muscles can recover from, but what about connective tissue, which we've just touched on, which is quite good. I've heard coaches propose that what's ultimately going to limit your progress is the health of your tendons and joints. Thoughts?
So, not a soft tissue expert, not a physiotherapist or massage therapist, and then I would say that I kind of guess it's dependent on you. To be honest, I don't take any consideration into or a lot of consideration to soft tissue work at all. I don't do any. If I'm programming, don't really think about that. I don't really do much in terms of foam rolling to keep soft tissue or the myofascial stuff. Don't really do any of that. I think if you find that, even what we've spoke about, if you're running mesocycles and you're switching things up every so often, that part of the body that's getting super fatigued in that block's probably going to get a nice rest for your next block anyway, in that repetitive muscle that's been worked. If this is just my own opinion, I'm to be honest, I've started to get a little bit confused looking into this for myself, because it's questions that we, not so much from my online clients, but the guys in the gym. It's questions that we get asked quite a lot about keeping that kind of that aspect of the body healthy, and how much they should be foam rolling, how much they should be getting massage therapy for any soft tissues. And this is just me, and I've got body problems. I've got different problems that people have got within my body. I still don't find it super necessary to get that done. I might get a sports massage every so often, just because I like it more than anything. I like the way it feels. I don't do a lot of foam rolling at all. And I think one thing I've noticed as well with likes of foam rolling and trying to manipulate all this stuff, it can almost become a comfort blanket for some people, and people rely too much of it. You shouldn't be going into a gym session feeling that you're so stiff and bunged up that you've got to foam roll for an hour before you train. And like I said, one of the things I'm getting quite confused recently, I must admit, is I've tried to look into some of this stuff to be able to advise properly. I don't know if you know Ben Cormack from Core Kinetics. So he's quite big on it's pain science, and very much to do with soft tissue, connective tissue, and how they work, and how they may or may not need rehabilitating and stuff. So it's very individual. If you like to if you think you perform better in the gym by doing some foam rolling and some stretching and some even yoga based stuff, if that's going to help, then I think it's cool. I don't think it should take a significant amount of time from your week or your training session, and I don't think, at least in my experience, it's more of a placebo than anything else. That's just my understanding of it. I've looked into it myself, and that's genuine because I genuinely want to get an understanding of it, because it's an area that I've never heard anyone with a cut and dry answer about myofascial release and the pain science to go along with that. But if I use myself as an example, I can't remember the last time I've foam rolled my quads and hamstrings, and or my lats, and I lat pull very well. I feel very healthy all the time. When I'm in the gym training my legs, I was waiting to say I squat well, but we know that's not true. So I'm not going to say that. But everything else, I feel perfectly healthy all the time. I never feel like I'm tight. I never feel like it's something that I need to consider myself.
Yeah, though I think I've recently listened to, and James Hoffman came to the UK in his seminar and did a recovery talk. And so this was fantastic. And he's recently been on 2 podcasts and basically talked about this sort of thing. So if you want, definitely listen to those. They're both fantastic. He touches on similar things, but they are fantastic. He's very entertaining as well. And he just gets to the grips with it. So if I try and tell you what I remember and summarize it in my own experience, in that, so myofascial release in itself, tissue isn't that pliable. You can't kind of change the tissue structure with a foam roller. You can't do it. Otherwise, the classic example is the squat with the bar on your back, it would kind of, you'd have a curve in your traps, because you've always got it there on your rear delts or whatever it is. Tissue isn't that pliable. What foam rolling has been shown to help with is kind of mobility. So if you have a knot or something, you can kind of press on it and it does relieve a bit of tension. And so it's useful in like a warm-up scenario. Between kind of your warm-up sets, you can do things. This is something I actually want to reel out to the Revive Stronger clients, is like a formal way of kind of identifying this, because it's something I haven't gone over recently. And so, that's foam rolling is useful for that. And I'm like yourself, I don't really foam roll unless I feel like it gives me a therapeutic benefit. If something feels a bit sore or tight, I might foam roll on it a little bit, but I'm not under the impression it's going to actually change the tissues there, and it's more in my head, and it is a bit of a placebo. Things like that. That's where I think foam rolling really can come in as like that sort of tool. In terms of kind of managing connective tissue and things, I think Sondre is completely right in that a lot of kind of, especially powerlifters, they end up, because they're so specific and they are like smashing these joints all the time, they don't have like fatigue management in place, and that comes before any of these kind of passive elements of kind of recovery methods. You need to get your training volume in place. So most of the time we're working underneath our MRV. We're working at a maximal adaptive volume. So we're working towards our MRV. We then overreach to reap the rewards. So we're fatigue managing via that. So you've got to get your volume in place. You could be either doing way too much or nothing at all. So you don't need, like, your tissues are going to be fine. So you need to get that in place first. And then we use fatigue management via deloads. We have light days in the gym where you might just do dynamic effort work, or the volume's just lower on that specific body part, and those things really help. And then after that, huge recovery benefits from sleeping. If you haven't got your sleep right, but you're foam rolling all the time, you've got your priorities the wrong way around. And this is actually something I want to get. I'd love to produce like a recovery pyramid in terms of what comes first. So like, you've got to get your calories in place. That's going to help your recovery. Sleep's going to help your recovery massively. Just not being a stress head is going to help your recovery so much, because I forget what it's called when you're in like a fight or flight state. You want to continuously be in kind of that parasympathetic, I think it's called, state, where you're in a recovery, kind of really relax. Try and be that stress-free person, especially after the gym, when you're kind of, you've just put your body through a load of stress, de-stress, and that's going to really help your recovery. And then these other tools and techniques like cupping, which we talked about before, myofascial release, compression methods like hot and ice cold baths and different supplements, they're going to be just like the nutrition training pyramids. They're going to be at the top there. They're not going to do that much for you.
Yeah.
And things like yoga and stuff, and like you said, just that's more of a relaxation. Like that's what it is. And if yoga forces you to relax, then do yoga. And if you enjoy it, do yoga. That's kind of summarizing what James really eloquently and really passionately provided. And actually, I've messaged him recently because I was going to ask him about a supplement, which is kind of like an anxiety reducing supplement. Because I was like, if you can reduce your anxiety, surely your stress levels come down, recovery will improve. I think it's called ashwagandha or something. It's kind of a bit of a... More people are talking about it recently.
Ashwagandha, yeah. This is an interesting topic for me, because I quite openly talk about my problems with stress and depression and anxiety. It all comes from being ill in the past. So it's something I'm looking into myself. It's really weird that you've just contacted James about that. I think Ian McCarthy was the first person to bring it to my attention, and he very highly rates it. So
yeah, he suffers from similar anxiety and depression. So
yeah, and 100%. If you can just, if we go right back to the fat loss clients, I think it was, I won't use some of the words that Lyle McDonald said, but I think it was something like, if you could just like chill out, you'd probably drop 5 pounds almost overnight with water and stuff, just because you're stressed so much. And we get clients in the gym who come in and they're like this, and it's not because they've got any problems in their muscles that are connective tissue. They're just so wired, and they almost can't move. They haven't got any joint problems. They haven't got any connective tissue problems, or they're literally just so stressed from their job, and it takes a bit of time to get going. So I would love to hear on a personal note the response you get regarding the ashwagandha, because it's something that I've seriously thought about myself. And yeah, like, or there'd be one more point I'd like to make about the foam rolling side of things, and would be about maybe not doing it in certain areas. So like, see a lot of people foam rolling their IT band, for example, and your IT band isn't, it's just tissue. It's just connective tissue. It can't be manipulated in a way. It's probably just going to cause pain. Like if you, oh yeah, and that's all it's going to cause. Is you might, when you foam roll your quad, if you, like you quite rightly said, if you could pinpoint a point on your quad with a ball or a foam roller, and work the knee into flexion extension to try and cure that area for at least temporary. That's pain, but you're getting that relief from it as well. But with an IT band, you're quite literally not. You could stretch your IT band out and hook it to the ceiling, and then put a weight on it for a week, and then come back, take the weight away, and it would just snap back into place. It can't be manipulated, and it will probably just cause you more harm than good. I think most people actually would benefit more from your quads, hamstrings, and even your tensor fascial latae, your kind of pocket height muscle, that lot of muscle around your hip would be more beneficial than the actual IT band. So we're not saying it not to do it, but just having that knowledge as well, where to do it and where not to do it. I think you're gonna cause more harm than good through your IT band, I think.
Yeah, I think mobility is highly individual, and I'd almost say if you're kind of taking care of your volume, you're relaxing, you're getting good sleep, you're not screwing up your nutrition, you're going to the gym and using full range of motion, and you feel good most of the time, you're probably in a good place. And you don't need to be too concerned about it. It's only kind of, and to be fair, someone who is lifting big ass weights is probably going to have to be more careful with all of that than someone lifting lighter weights. Yeah. And also, I guess, come into this is form as well. You have to have good form on the movements, otherwise that could in its own cause bad problems.
Absolutely, Steve. Yeah.
Cool. So I think we've covered all the questions. We've been on for an hour, so I think we can call it a day there. Thank you guys for the questions. They're really, really cool, and hopefully we've answered them well enough for you. If we haven't, let us know. We'll get to them. If anyone else has any kind of questions or comments about anything we've said, please let us know in the comments, and we really appreciate it. And I just want to say, before Mike comes on next time, we've still got the opportunity to win a free book, his ebook Understanding Healthy Eating, which is fantastic. And he rightly said himself, it's his pride of work that he's produced. It's his most
amazing book.
Yeah, really, really good book. I'm almost through it now, and I'm going to do a review on the book itself. But if you review the podcast on iTunes and tell us that you've done that, however you want to contact us, you get entered into potentially winning a free copy. So that would be really, really helpful. But thank you all for listening. Really appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.